Morning everyone. In this series of videos we're going to look at London by William Blake. In this particular video we'll discuss which other poems from the Power and Conflict cluster compare well with London, and there'll also be some GCSE exam style questions that you can try too. There's a link in the description to the other videos in the series, as well as a link to the slides if you want them. So what poems compare well with London? Honestly, there isn't a straight answer for this question. It completely depends on what the theme of the question is. An example being, if you got a question about the power of humans, Ozymandias would work well as a comparison with London. But if you got a question about the emotion of anger, Ozymandias wouldn't be your best bet. Something like Checking Out Me History would work better. I'm not saying it's impossible to use Ozymandias as a comparison poem about anger, but it would be difficult, and why make life difficult for yourself? Now let's go through a few potential questions and discuss which poems would work. Obviously this is not a complete list. I'm only going to give a couple of questions and 2 poems that could work. It's up to you to decide if you agree and why those particular poems would work. If you want to take these questions and use them as exam practice, feel free. It'd be great if you walked into the exam hall, opened the paper and saw that it was a question that you'd already written an essay for, or at least planned an answer for during your revision. So, the first question. Compare how poets present ideas about power in London and in one other poem from Power and Conflict. And with it being a cluster of poems called Power and Conflict, quite a few poems are power themed. So thinking about the different types of power, I'd consider looking at the abuse of power in Checking Out Me History for this question, or the themes of power that run through tissue, such as the frailty of power. Plenty of other poems would work for this question too. Second question. Compare how poets explore the theme of patriotism in London and in one other poem from Power and Conflict. For this question, I'll be looking at some of the war poems and compare the idea of fighting for your country with Blake's negative views on the country's leaders. Poems such as Charge of the Light Brigade and their blind obedience towards power, or Kamikaze and the family's idea that we should put patriotism over family. Both of those could work. In fact, most of the war poems would work. King, honour, human dignity, etc. is one quotation that springs to mind. The third question. Compare how poets present ideas about setting in London and in one other poem from Power and Conflict. For setting, Storm on the Island and The Emigre are obvious choices for a comparison point about geographical locations. You could think about depictions of the setting and the people who live there, as well as attitudes towards the setting. Next question. Compare how poets present the theme of pride in London and in one other poem from Power and Conflict. For pride, I'd be thinking about Blake's lack of pride in his city and link it to the Duke's excessive pride in My Last Duchess. Or thinking about Ozymandias' pride in Ozymandias. You could get some good contextual comparison points about the British Empire by using Ozymandias as a comparison poem too. And why not challenge yourself? And try writing an answer for one of the questions that we've just been through. A poetry question should take roughly 45 minutes to complete, and you should only use a blank copy of London to represent the settings of the exam. It's worth 30 marks, which is just over 18% of the whole English literature GCSE. And for those of you that don't want to be influenced by my ideas about comparison poems, you can pause the video and try this question here. Compare how poets present the theme of oppression in London and in one other poem from Power and Conflict. And that's all for today's video. I hope you found it useful, and if you did, don't be shy with the like and subscribe buttons. It really helps out with YouTube's algorithms. Thanks for watching, and happy revising.